Because you're not even half the woman your sister is. My father's voice cut across the dinner table so sharply that even the clinking silverware stopped. 8 relatives stared at me. Across from me, Vanessa lowered her eyes, but not before I caught the tiny smile at the corner of her mouth. Dad lifted his wineglass toward her. Your sister built a company. She has a beautiful marriage, a beautiful home. She actually made something of herself. Richard enough, Mom whispered. I didn't move. For years, this was how it worked. Vanessa accomplished something, Dad celebrated her, then somehow my name became the punchline. But tonight was different. I looked at him and smiled. Coldly. Good, I said. Tonight, everyone hears the truth about you too. Vanessa's smile vanished. Mom's face went pale. No, please, she whispered. Don't. That was when I knew something I hadn't known, when I walked into that house. Mom knew. And the folder beside my chair was about to prove exactly what she had been helping them hide. Vanessa had spent the first half of dinner talking about expanding her boutique consulting company. She described the new clients she was bringing in, the people she planned to hire, and the expensive anniversary trip she and her husband were considering. Dad listened like she was delivering a keynote speech. When she finished, he raised his glass. To Vanessa, proof that ambition pays off. A few relatives politely lifted their glasses. I reached for my water. My Aunt Carol apparently sensed where the conversation was headed. Myla, she said, how are things going at work? Actually, Work is work, Dad interrupted. Vanessa built a life, there's a difference. My hand stopped around my glass. At 31, I had a stable corporate career. I paid my own bills, saved my money, and had never once asked Dad to rescue me financially. Apparently, because I didn't advertise my achievements over dinner, they didn't count. I looked directly at him. Why does everything I do have to become a competition with Vanessa? His expression hardened. Because you're not even half the woman your sister is. That was the sentence that changed the dinner. Not because I hadn't heard versions of it before. Because this time, I knew something he didn't know I knew. I glanced at Vanessa. She didn't defend me. Of course she didn't. For 6 years, she had allowed Dad to hold up her financial success as evidence that she was smarter, braver, more ambitious. 3 days earlier, I had discovered there was a very specific reason her success had always seemed so effortless. Dad finally noticed the slim folder beside my chair. What's that? I reached down and placed it on the table. His eyes followed it. Don't start making a scene, Myla. I'm not making one. I opened the folder. Mom pushed her chair back slightly. Myla, please. Everyone looked at her now. Dad's jaw tightened. Vanessa had gone completely still. I looked from my father to my sister. Then I pulled out the first document. Should I start with Grandma's will? I asked. Or the $68,000 that disappeared after she died? 3 days before that dinner, I had walked into Mom's kitchen carrying a letter that made 6 years of family history suddenly stop making sense. Mom, what happened to Grandma's money? Her hand froze halfway to the coffee pot. That reaction was small, but I noticed it. What money? I placed the letter on the counter. For most of my life, Vanessa had been the daughter Dad called a born winner. She took risks, dressed well, started her own company, and made sure everyone knew when things were going well. I had chosen differently. Stable corporate job, modest apartment, aggressive savings, no loans from Dad. Grandma Evelyn had been one of the few people who never treated that difference like a failure. You're building something nobody can take from you, she used to tell me. Before she died, she also told me she had set something aside for my future. But afterward, Dad explained that estate expenses had consumed most of the available cash. I believed him. Until that letter arrived from the attorney who had handled Grandma's estate. I tapped one paragraph. It says Grandma allocated $68,000 specifically to me. Mom stared at the page. Your father handled all of that. That's not what I asked. She looked away. Then why was I never told the money existed? Myla. What happened to it? Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. Dad's home office was at the end of it. I followed her gaze to the locked cabinet visible through the half-open door. That was when my suspicion hardened. I'm requesting the complete estate accounting tomorrow. Mom suddenly reached across the counter and grabbed my wrist. Don't. I looked down at her hand. Why? Her grip loosened. Some things can destroy a family once you dig them up. I slowly pulled my wrist free. If asking where my inheritance went can destroy this family, then I'm not the one who created the problem. Mom said nothing. I took the letter and left. The next morning, I emailed the estate attorney requesting every document I was legally entitled to review. A few hours later, he called me. Myla, I wanted you to know something before I send these records. What? There was a pause. Your father contacted my office this morning. My stomach tightened. Why? He wanted to know whether your request could be stopped. And just like that, Dad did the one thing guaranteed to make me keep digging. Dad couldn't stop the records from reaching me. I was a named beneficiary, so 2 days later, the estate documents landed in my inbox. I searched until one transaction stopped me cold. $68,000. Transferred shortly after Grandma died into an account connected to Dad. I still couldn't prove where the money went, but I remembered something else from that year. Vanessa's company had nearly collapsed. At a small family gathering later that day, Dad started the comparisons again. Vanessa understood something early, he announced. You have to take risks if you want real success. Vanessa smiled. I set down my glass. When exactly did your company almost fail? Her smile disappeared. What? During your second year, what month was it? Dad immediately leaned forward. What does that have to do with anything? I looked at him. Interesting. I hadn't accused him of anything. Because Grandma's $68,000 disappeared during the same month, Vanessa had overdue rent, unpaid suppliers, and payroll problems. Vanessa's face tightened. You've been investigating my business. I asked about my inheritance. You're jealous, she snapped. You've always hated that Dad respects what I built. Nobody laughed. My uncle glanced at Dad, waiting for him to deny what I had suggested. Instead, Dad pointed at me. Stop embarrassing your sister. That told me more than a denial would have. If Vanessa had nothing to do with the money, why was Dad protecting her instead of simply saying so? That night, my phone rang. Vanessa. Her voice was softer now. Myla, this has gone far enough. Has it? Whatever Dad did back then, dragging everyone into it won't change anything. I stopped packing. She kept talking, apparently unaware of what she had just given me. We're sisters. We can work this out privately. I opened the Notes app on my laptop and typed the date, time, and her exact wording. Then I asked quietly, Vanessa. What? I never told you Dad was involved. Silence. Not confusion. Not a question. Just silence. After Vanessa hung up, I stopped asking my family questions. I took everything to an estate attorney. He spent nearly an hour reviewing Grandma's instructions, the accounting records, and the $68,000 transfer before looking across his desk at me. Did you ever authorize this? No. Sign anything releasing these funds? No. He tapped the documents. Then, based on what I'm seeing, this transfer was not authorized by you. That was the moment suspicion became something much more serious. We followed the paper trail. Dad had moved the money through an account he controlled. From there, Records connected payments to obligations belonging to Vanessa's struggling company. Then I found the document that changed everything. Buried among copies of old estate correspondence was a reference from Dad describing the money as a temporary asterisk family advance. There was no authorization from me. But another page carried a signature. Vanessa Bennett. She had acknowledged receiving the advance and agreed to repay Dad. I stared at her signature. Vanessa hadn't unknowingly benefited from what Dad did. She knew. There was only one question left. How much did Mom know? I went back to her house and placed only the first page of the records in front of her. Her shoulders dropped. Mom, tell me the truth. She covered her mouth. Your father said it was temporary. I said nothing. He said Vanessa was going to lose everything. Her business, her employees, everything. He said he would replace your money before you ever needed to know. And Vanessa, she knew she had to repay it. But she didn't. Mom shook her head. And Dad told me Grandma's money was gone because of estate expenses. Tears filled her eyes. I wanted him to tell you. But you stayed quiet. She looked down. That was enough. I called my attorney from my car. Prepare the repayment demand. When do you want it sent? I looked at the invitation on my passenger seat. Dad's family dinner celebrating Vanessa's latest business milestone. After dinner, 3 nights later, I walked into my parents' house carrying copies of everything. And right on schedule, Dad raised his glass to Vanessa, dismissed my career, and finally snapped. You're not even half the woman your sister is. I smiled. Good, tonight everyone hears the truth about you too. I placed the folder on the table. Dad pushed back his chair. You have no idea what you're talking about. Richard, stop. Everyone turned toward Mom. Her face had gone pale. She looked at Dad, then at the documents in my hand. She has the documents. Dad stared at Mom. For once, he had nothing ready to say. I opened the folder and passed copies around the table. I'm not asking anyone to choose sides, I said. Just read the dates. Vanessa pushed her copy away. Myla, this is ridiculous. No, what's ridiculous is spending 6 years pretending you didn't know. I pointed to the first document. Grandma Evelyn allocated $68,000 specifically to me. My aunt looked up sharply. Dad crossed his arms. There were circumstances you didn't understand. I understand them now. I laid out the records in order. Shortly after Grandma died, Vanessa's company developed serious cash flow problems. Rent was overdue. Suppliers needed payment. Payroll was becoming difficult to cover. Dad had access to Grandma's estate administration. Instead of telling me what was happening, he moved my $68,000 through an account he controlled. The money was then used toward Vanessa's business obligations. And I never authorized any of it. Dad finally spoke. Your sister was facing an emergency. I helped my daughter. I looked directly at him. Then, why did helping her require lying to me? His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Vanessa grabbed the edge of the table. I was going to repay it. I pulled out the next page and slid it toward her. Then explain this. Her signature was at the bottom. She had acknowledged the money as an advance and agreed to repay Dad. My uncle picked up his copy. Vanessa, you signed this. She stared at the page. Yes, but... And when your company recovered, he asked, why didn't you repay it? Vanessa looked at Dad. That answer was written all over her face. Dad tried again. This was a family matter. There was no reason for it to become some public spectacle. I almost laughed. A family matter. I looked around the table. For 6 years, you used Vanessa's business to tell everyone what a success she was and what a disappointment I was. You called her ambitious because she built something. You called me ordinary because I lived within my means. Nobody interrupted me. All while part of the reason her company survived was money Grandma left to me. Vanessa's face reddened. I worked for everything I have. I never said you didn't work. I said you knew where that $68,000 came from, and you stayed silent every time Dad used your success to humiliate me. Mom started crying. I told Richard we should tell you. I turned toward her. But you didn't. I was afraid it would destroy the family. The truth didn't destroy this family. What you protected did. Dad pushed his chair back. So what now? You want your money? Fine, we'll work something out. We already are. I removed the final papers. My attorney has prepared a formal demand for repayment of the $68,000 and the accounting necessary to resolve the unauthorized transfer. Dad's expression changed. Until that moment, he still thought this was an argument he could control. It was. Within weeks, attorneys handled what my family had refused to handle honestly for 6 years. Dad and Vanessa agreed to repay the full amount rather than escalate the dispute. But the money wasn't the only thing they lost. Vanessa could no longer let our relatives believe her business story had happened exactly the way she had presented it. Several family members stopped treating Dad's comparisons as harmless comments once they understood what had been behind them. Dad called me repeatedly. Eventually, I answered. You're really going to let one mistake erase 31 years of family? He asked. One mistake was moving the money, Dad. Lying afterward was a choice. Comparing me to Vanessa for 6 years was another choice. He went quiet. Vanessa contacted me too. Do you think we can ever fix this? Maybe, I said, but not by pretending accountability and reconciliation are the same thing. When the full repayment arrived, I put the money into the long-term investment account I had once planned to build with Grandma's inheritance. I stopped attending family gatherings where Dad could use money and approval to decide who mattered most. I kept limited contact with Mom, with boundaries she now understood were not negotiable. And I stopped competing with Vanessa. Because finally, I understood something. There had never been a fair competition. Dad had manufactured one, secretly handed Vanessa an advantage, and then punished me for losing a race I never agreed to run. Months later, my aunt called. You know your father doesn't compare you and Vanessa anymore. I smiled. Good. Dad told me I wasn't half the woman my sister was. By the end of dinner, everyone finally understood why I was grateful he was right.